Hey, thanks for joining us. We are coming to you from Managed Solution, a business consulting and technology company. And I have with me our Director of Sales, Tina Rountrree. Tina, thank you so much for being here and joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I've learned so much from you, so I'm actually really excited to be interviewing you right now. Um, so you've been the Director of Sales for Managed Solution for 6+ years, correct?
Well, I started at Managed Solutions 6 years ago,
Okay.
and that was really my first foray into IT and technology sales. And
Mhm.
so I worked my way up, right? I was in the field selling to customers for a couple of years, and then I transitioned to Director of Channel Partnerships and started working on building out a more formal channel platform for
Mhm.
Managed Solution. And about a year into that, they asked me to step into director of sales.
Nice.
So I
Okay.
think it's been about 3 years now.
A few years. And before you were with Managed Solution, how long has your sales career been? How long have you been doing sales?
Oh, you're aging me now. Um, it had been about 15 years. So selling in the finance industry
Hmm.
and to enterprise, actually enterprise rent a car was one of my big clients. A lot of big rental car agencies, insurance companies, that type of buyer was who I was talking to at the time.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've been in the field 15+ years. What's one of the lessons that you've learned through sales that you will never forget? Something that you've taken away, either a life lesson or a business lesson?
I think one of the things I always say salespeople are kind of a rare breed. And one of the things that I do love about being in sales is that it forces you to reflect, right? Every time we lose an opportunity or we lose a deal, we have to take a look at, what we could have done differently. And sometimes there's some glaring realities around what we could have done differently. And sometimes, it's not as clear. But I definitely um, having lost deals at a later stage in the sales cycle is something that drives me absolutely bananas. So, really trying to make sure that I am strategic and going deep and wide into an account instead of just selling to one person is
Hmm.
something that has served me well in my career because ultimately companies make decision by consensus. It's very rarely one person that is involved in these type of buying decisions. And so
Hmm.
really getting the lay of the land and understanding everybody's perspective and having a good idea of where everybody's at in your sales cycle, I think is a big lesson for me and something that I won't soon forget, I hope.
I mean, I've experienced you not forget it. um, yeah, and it's definitely a key thing. I think a big thing about our company and about you and honestly our whole leadership team is that we do feel like a very client and people focused company. And I'm very proud to know that that's part of why we're so successful, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, technology is there to serve people, right? And so our goal, while the technology is fun and cool, and I know our engineers love to geek out on it, really, if it's not making somebody's life or job better and easier, then we're not doing our job. So ultimately, everything connects right back to people.
Absolutely. So I wanted to bring you on today because we're in a very interesting economic environment. And not just that, but I think when, us as consumers, we're all consumers of some sort. We're always trying to make the right decision or the best decision for ourselves, especially if we're making a decision that's going to affect our team and our company and our clients. So I wanted to bring you on and ask you, what are the top things that somebody who is in the market for any sort of IT or business technology purchase, what are the top things that they should be looking for, whether it's in the technology or in the team that they're hiring, and how should they begin to go about it?
Well, a couple of things. I think that when you're pricing out IT solutions, historically what I've seen is that we don't make it super simple, right? It's really hard to get what we like to call an apples to apples comparison because, managed service providers have their own tools that they use, they bundle their solutions together. And so, getting really, really clear about what you're buying first and foremost. There are providers out there that have more of an unlimited type model where they're going to tell you everything is included. Generally, there's a except for X, Y, and Z, right? So really understanding what is X, Y, and Z. When am I going to be in support? When am I going to be out of support? Um, there are pricing mechanisms out there for more of a break fix type model where you pay an hourly fee for services. There's also managed services, and then there's kind of all-in-seat pricing, or we're going to, again, do a more comprehensive support where you get everything for one flat rate. So just trying to really get clear on what's included, what's not included, and then also having a lot of clarity around what your business needs are. You
Mhm.
know, um, we're seeing a lot of very budget driven conversations in today's marketplace, and understandably so. There's a lot of uncertainty. People are very concerned about making really sound business decisions. And so, what unfortunately can happen is the market can respond to that by doing a lot of lowballing of services, right? So now companies may come in at a very low price point, but not be super clear that there are big chunks of the service delivery that are being left out and or potentially outsourced overseas. It's another big way that companies provide IT help and support is by doing a lot of outsourcing overseas. So really understanding, when I call the help desk, am I going to get somebody that's based locally or a US based help desk? Ultimately, there's probably going to be a little more cost associated with that type of solution. Is it going to be worth it for your business and your end user experience?
Yeah.
Um, so a couple things to watch out for.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is it's a little bit like, when we go and buy a cell phone plan, there's so much that's not included sometimes, or we just want like the lowest rate, or even a health insurance plan. You need to be willing to question the people that you're talking to and ask them all the nitty gritty details. And I find that I don't know if you find this, but sometimes, often people who do think about these things, they have no problem asking because they know the consequences of not asking. But some people just don't want to question too much, or they don't want to push too hard. Do you ever experience that?
I do. Sometimes buyers are really apologetic because they want to really drill down. And I always encourage it because, in my experience, a well educated and informed buyer leads to a much more successful relationship.
Yeah.
So I think anyone that's trying to push you through the buying cycle without really wanting to go deep, that would be a red flag for me. It's much easier for us to have really great expectations if we both understand what those are. So, going slowly, really understanding what you're getting, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think greater satisfaction after the sale is complete.
Mm-hmm. And I think that there's also there's a feeling that a buyer should get. And I've seen this transition in some of our process that I've been a part of, where a buyer comes in like wanting all of these things or wanting just a few things. And then in the conversation, there's almost a transformation of the vision of what's possible for their company. But when I've seen things shift to in the best way possible, I've seen people just get really excited about what they're about to create within their company, technology wise. And there's this feeling of real safety and comfort with the person that they're buying from, right? With the vendor um, or the provider. And would you say that that's something that, like, as a buyer, you should start to feel when you're actually making the decision?
I
Or
mean,
that just
I
sounds.
would say, you know, people buy based on emotion. We do know that, right? People
Right.
buy when they feel safe and when things feel good and when there's trust established. So, yes, I think what you're getting at is definitely a part of the process, along with a very well structured and organized process where we can um, understand really what the person that I'm sitting across the table from, my ultimate goal is to really understand what the challenge is and what they're trying to accomplish.
Hmm.
And then, you know, if I can help them to really be able to articulate how that's going to improve the process or solve the challenge that they're looking to solve, right? And then if I can't help them, providing some guidance on where they can go to get what they need. You know, it's one of the things that I think is really important in a sales is just a conversation,
Hmm.
and it's a conversation about understanding what is needed and then trying to connect those dots back to what we do. And if it connects, great, but if it doesn't, that's okay too, and being able to, you know, redirect the buyer. So, you know, maybe that's the trust factor that you're kind of touching on, is just, you know, trying to solve a problem versus trying to shoehorn somebody into buying something they don't need.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what other advice would you give to someone who's out there looking? Because there are different levels of buyers, right? Some people really know exactly what they want. They've been down that IT, that technology road before, the managed services road before. They really know and they're educated or largely educated already. And then there are others that really aren't. So I'm curious to know maybe what would you say to the people who are not a little less educated on this stuff? Because that's the majority, really.
I mean, I would say, you know, before we were in a situation where we were all remote, I would say go visit your IT vendor's office, right? Our competitive landscape is interesting to say the least, and we have a lot of, you know, people that are independent out in the field selling and maybe positioning themselves as a larger company than they are.
Hmm.
Again, we have that outsourcing arm. So, you know, a company might consider those people that they have as an outsourced help desk as part of their company and present as such. So, you know, being able to get some visual or being able to walk through the office and feel the culture and see the boards and see the tickets being resolved and the energy of the people. I mean, that is super important. In today's environment, it's not necessarily as easy to do, but there are lots of, you know, maybe a virtual meeting or some video on the company, just really trying to do your homework there to make sure that, you know, you're going to be getting what it is that you're looking for in terms of support. The other thing to be wary of, if the price sounds too good, it probably is, right? Our industry has resources that are very expensive and hard to find, and those services are not super inexpensive. So if you are pricing projects and you see a project that is considerably less than every other price that you're getting, um, my first question would be why? What am I not getting with this very inexpensive solution that other companies are trying to steer me away from, right? And what we see in this is kind of what prompted this conversation is a lot of very low ball quotes from providers that do a very rudimentary job in terms of services and not a full solution delivered to the customer. So the customer may have a data migration and they're left with an environment that isn't configured correctly.
Mm.
And, you know, unfortunately, at that point, they become kind of stuck because they're already halfway through. And so there's project change requests that start coming in, and all of a sudden they're paying 3 times the amount that they originally anticipated. And now they're at where everybody else was in in the beginning of the conversation. So when you see these solutions coming across that are very inexpensive, just be mindful that one, maybe they're not a fully baked solution, and trying to understand what is being left off, Um, and then two, what's the level of talent that's delivering the technology? Because ultimately it can cost a lot more if you have people that don't know what they're doing that mess up a migration or data migration or configuration, and customers have to go out and find another company to kind of clean that up and fix it. So, you know.
Which I've known we've seen before. So again, so what I'm hearing is, it's still make sure you're asking all the questions that basically come to mind, and make sure you're asking all the right questions, even if you are, let's say, less educated on this technology, you still should be, and we encourage you to ask all those questions. So, it can feel a little weird asking a vendor, what's the quality of your talent? How does somebody go about sort of assessing that, right? I think part of it can be, well, what are some projects that you've done in the past? But even if you're not fully educated on the stuff, you may not really know what that means when they respond. So are there any specific questions that you would encourage people to ask regarding all the things that you just mentioned?
Well, asking about past projects is a really good a really good way to get an idea of what the company has been involved in. Getting referrals is great, a great way to get somebody outside of the conversation to help validate. And I would even go so far as to kind of look on LinkedIn and see if there's some mutual connections that you could reach out to outside of just the person that I might give you, because the person I'm going to give you is going to give us a great referral, right? I'm never going to give you somebody that's going to tell you it's not great.
Mhm.
But hearing that from somebody that's unprompted is always, I mean, that's amazing when that happens for us. Um, and then I think that, understanding that there are certifications that engineers receive based on their education from partners like Microsoft or, some of the other vendors out there. Cisco's one of them, right? So the certifications that are held can also be a great indicator for you of the level of knowledge that the team has in terms of experience and being able to, those tests are not easy to pass. So
I was just going to say, they're not light certifications. It's not like, you know, getting just any old, like a cooking certification or something. I hope nobody who's cooking professionally watches this. I don't know. It seems like a light thing, but they're not. They're hours and hours and hours and hours long. And what I've seen is even in conversations, the depth of conversation that an experienced engineer, somebody who really understands what they're talking about, is able to have is a whole other experience than somebody who is going to offer you that lightweight, reduced cost offer that sounds and looks really good, but maybe they're outsourcing all the heavy lifting to India or wherever they're outsourcing it to, and they don't actually have that knowledge in house. So the person who is actually selling the services, they don't really understand the magnitude of what you're actually getting. They maybe think it's great, but you need somebody in house who you can talk to who really gets it.
yeah, and I think that's, why our model of having engineers that are delivering the project, also scoping and architecting the solution, has been so successful because, at the end of the day, that person that you're speaking to is going to be responsible for the delivery. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really important that they understand what the customers are trying to accomplish, right? So that's been our methodology, and it has been a really successful way to go versus you've just got to think logically about, you get a salesperson selling you something and then they toss the ball to a team that maybe overseas to deliver, and it's like any good game of telephone, things are lost in translation. And so um, I think that's something that, although it's expensive for our company to do because of, just we don't charge for that part of our process. Ultimately, it ends up being a better deliverable for the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and more happy customers is what we're looking for. I mean, that's more business for us and more name recognition and brand awareness. And so that's our goal.
Yeah. Has there ever been a customer where you thought we could be a good fit except this piece, like there's something missing, and you guided them in a different direction?
I mean, there's certainly technology is such a large topic, and when I first started in technology, I would approach every opportunity as a sales opportunity.
Hmm.
And what I quickly learned was that we have our core skill sets where we really shine and we're really good, right? We're very highly Microsoft certified, we're big partners there. Um, and so I started refocusing my efforts towards opportunities that were in our wheelhouse. So for example, while we have some Linux engineers on staff, if there was a large data migration for a Linux environment that was strictly Linux, I would pass on that. I would redirect them. I've got some partners in our portfolio that would be really good.
Hmm.
Um, we also don't really play with, you know, setting up an ERP system, right? So we can support the infrastructure underneath it, but the actual development of software or standing that up is not our core. I've got partners that work with, Dynamics and Sage and some of those other large deployment type, large software deployments and development. So it just depends on if I think that our team has the skill set and is a good fit. And if they're not, then fortunately, we've got a ton of great partners in the channel that we can plug in and recommend services.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else that you want to mention?
Um,
Catching you off guard now.
yeah, it's kind of such an open-ended question.
So open-ended. I mean, I know as far as clients who are great for us, I know, like you said, technology is such a vast conversation. Maybe now is a good time to just mention like who, what is exactly our wheelhouse. And you mentioned Microsoft, just so people know.
Yes. So at our core, at our heart, we're a managed service provider. We've been doing this for 18 years. We provide support services for businesses large and small, from just monitoring to help desk, all the way to on site support. And then we extend that through our professional services team. And through that team, we focus on areas like security. And that could be all the different layers, right? It could be your endpoint, it could be your network, it could be your cloud architecture. We do a lot of work in moving data into the cloud. And then to take that even a step further, all of the analytics that you can lay on top of that to really provide insight into your business on all this data that you have accumulated over the past decade, right? Now we're all big, we've all got these big warehouses of data. Are you using your data? I guess we can help you there. And then one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, which is the collaboration portals and the culture driving tools that businesses need today, particularly as we're all remote, right? So, how do we stay connected? How do we collaborate? I'm a big collaborator. I prefer working in a team versus working independently. So, how can we build some virtual teams for the business to enable our users to continue those collaborative conversations, even though they're all remote, right? So, modern workplace is a really big technology that's right in our core.
Hmm. Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I also like to give a shout out to the moms during this time, like mama four over here.
Yes. Thankfully,
um,
all of my kids are college bound and beyond. So I am not having to do what some of the other moms out there are doing, which is, homeschooling and providing all the childcare and trying to hold down a full-time job. I'm in awe. I mean, I had a conversation with my husband the other day saying, thank goodness this didn't happen like 5 years ago when we had 4 teenagers in the house. Could you imagine? I would have jumped off the roof. But
Oy.
now,
Yeah.
it's a little less intense.
A little quieter at home now. But you're still leading the company and still, with the rest of the leadership team. And, you know, I'm having a good time being on the team. So here, cheers to
Awesome.
that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. And if anybody has questions for Tina, please, hit us up, let me know, let Tina know, connect with Tina on LinkedIn. You can connect with me, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.
Bye.